Over the years, Don Dixon has produced some of the greatest albums of all time. Records by R.E.M., Marshall Crenshaw, The Smithereens, Guadalcanal Diary, and Let's Active. He's also produced albums by his wife, Marti Jones. Marti is a wonderful singer-songwriter as well as a fine artist whose work graced the cover of White Noise and Lightning, The Continental Drifters Story. Don and Marti are great musicians, and I've been a fan for years. Stay tuned for a talk with Don Dixon and Marti Jones. You're listening to Frets with DJ Fey. No lessons, no technique info. I just talk to people who play guitar. Stay tuned. Listeners, today we have two incredibly talented guests, singer, songwriter, musician, and producer Don Dixon, and his wife, singer, guitarist, painter, and visual artist Marti Jones. Thank you both so much for doing this, and welcome to Frets.
Thank you. This is fun.
Dave.
Yeah, I'm so thrilled to talk to you guys.
Well, thank you.
Marti, I know Don's early years were a little bit before yours, but your early years, were near Akron, Ohio, in Uniontown.
Yeah, you did your homework. Uniontown, Ohio. Yeah.
Uniontown, Ohio, near Akron, I think.
Yes.
So do you have any memories of your first exposure to music when you were growing up there? Like, did you spark to anything at a young age in those?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, my parents were big on listening to music, and we heard everything from, my dad got a hi-fi whenever they first became available. And it was, we'd sit on Sunday mornings and listen to music. It was pretty cool.
That's great.
They belonged to a record club, so they would let us choose things. Mom went to the grocery one Saturday and came home with a Beatles record, and we were crazy for it. And then my sisters, from early on, my sisters and I sang together from like the time I was 3 or 4, and in the back of the station wagon when we would be on family vacations, and we inevitably would laugh before we'd get to the end of the song and could never finish a song, to the point where my father would say, "I'll give you each a dime if you can finish the song without laughing." Never. We never could at all. But it was fun. Yeah. And then on my 10th birthday, I asked for a guitar, and my mom and dad, my older sister Johnny's birthday was the day after mine. I stole her glory. I'm the youngest of 3. Oh. And by being born on the day before her birthday. So she wanted a guitar. So they got me a ukulele, thinking that I wouldn't take it on or stick with it, or, being cautious.
You were just 10.
And then they got my sister Johnny a guitar. So I kind of learned everything I could learn on the ukulele, like Blue Moon.
5'2".
5'2". A cousin of mine showed me how to play chords, and it was so much fun. And then I gradually took over my sister Johnny's guitar, and then my middle sister Claudia and she started playing, and so we started playing together. We were the Jones girls. We were a duo. We played at coffee houses, church socials, Lions Club, things, and just in the community.
Nice.
And it just kept going from there.
So kind of folk music.
Yeah, we would do a lot of, we didn't write our own stuff, but we would do like Simon and Garfunkel songs and Peter, Paul and Mary songs and just those kinds of things. Yes, folk music.
Yeah, love that. Well, before long, you studied art at Kent State, I guess in the 70s?
Yeah. I graduated from high school in 1974 and went straight to Kent State as an art major and stayed there for 5 years. I liked it so much, but it took me a little bit longer just because I was having so much fun learning things that I would take a lot of English and literature courses as well as art. So I had a little bit more than I needed when I graduated, but I had fun.
Of course, I always sadly associate Kent State with, which I guess would have happened before you were there, but
4 years.
the awful events that happened there that Neil Young wrote about. But
yeah. It was still pretty fresh. I was there when they were their plans were to build a gym, but it was on the site where the shooting happened. And so a bunch of the students camped out in and it was called Tent City for a long time until, I don't even remember, this is terrible, I don't remember what the agreement was, how they reached an agreement, but by the end of that quarter, because we were on quarters then, or 2 quarters, I think, they were gone. So I think it was peaceful, but they reached an agreement.
Wow. Well, Don, your early years were in South Carolina. Same question I asked Marty. Do you remember what music you were hearing that caught your ear as a kid?
I had older sisters as well, just like Marty. And
we each have 2 older sisters that made our lives a living hell. But
also helped
we
us.
Definitely got them back.
I was exposed to all the early rock and roll stuff because I'm old. I was born in 1950. So by the time I can remember liking songs, they were like Tutti Frutti and Elvis and Jerry Lee Lewis and stuff like that. Those were the records my sister was bringing back and playing. Plus guys like Marv Johnson, who people don't know anymore, but he was one of the first guys that Berry Gordy wrote songs for, and he was one of my favorites. And
oh, wow.
This is all mid-50s kind of stuff. Yeah. So I was 4 or 5. There's a recording of me singing Tutti Frutti in a voice booth in Florida from 1956, just a few months after it was a hit for Little Richard. So I liked that, but I always liked, other stuff too. I mean, I remember like my wife here, my parents had a stereo and Dad would occasionally bring home records. And I remember he brought, when I was about 10 or maybe 11, brought home a really great record by Peggy Lee that was a live. It was called Live at Basin Street East, and that was a very influential record for me as a little kid, as a singer. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not too far behind you, by the way. I was born in 58, so.
Okay, well, you and Marty are closer, though.
Yeah.
You're younger than I am.
My dad, which I love, he had a great record collection, mostly jazz, some folk, but
That's
a
great.
lot of jazz. But it was my older brother. It was just 2 brothers, and I was the younger brother. But yeah, when we were still living at home with Mom and Dad, and I don't know, junior high school years, my brother started amassing. He had all the Neil Young albums. He had,
Wow.
I got a lot of exposure. Well, and not excluding. We had a pretty good local FM station, one independent and one mainstream that played a lot of classic rock. But I was getting a nice mix of stuff from Dad and from my older brother.
Yeah, you came up at a good time for FM radio.
Yeah, it was really nice. Well, in junior high, Don, you wanted to learn bass guitar.
Well, yeah, I my first real instrument, I could play the piano. I sort of picked up from my sisters taking lessons, and I could play things, by ear. But I did join the marching band in the 7th grade and got a trombone, and I learned how to play trombone. So my first band, I'm actually the trombone player in. But that,
oh wow!
And then I wanted to join these guys that were playing that I really liked, that were a year ahead of me in school, that had a band, and it was an instrumental band that played all the Great American Songbook stuff, and they played adult dances, they beauty pageants, things like that, because everybody could read music. So when I joined the marching band and I learned actually how to read, bass clef, they needed a bass player. So I saved up my money and bought a bass from Sears. That was why I played bass. I liked Paul McCartney when I first saw him, but I was already playing bass by then. So he didn't cause me to play bass.
Right.
One of my heroes that nobody ever talks about, bass player heroes, is Norm Sundlam, who was the bass player for the Kingsmen of Louie fame. And he and his brother started Sun Amps. I don't know whether you know about amps or not. Sun Amps was a great amplifier company back in the 60s and 70s. Anyway, he was a Portland, Oregon kid, but he was almost more of an influence on me than Paul McCartney was.
Huh. Well, that led to you playing bass with a jazz musician on what I think was your very first recording.
Yeah, I did play a lot of jazz too. I've got an upright right away. And because that band played the American Songbook, which sort of bled over into jazz, and I had a very good friend named Howard Dry, who was a hugely influential on me musically. That the first person I ever knew that went to Berklee School of Music in Boston, for example. And he was a baritone saxophone player. As well as piano and flute and stuff. So I started playing upright, and I began to play with this guy named Lunas McGlowan, who was a pretty well-known piano player, in that sort of Marion McPartland sort of school of music in the late 50s, 60s, 70s. Great guy.
Wow. Around that time, were you living in North Carolina at that point, or did you move there when you attended UNC?
Yeah, I just moved there to go to college and then just stayed there for 18 years. So I was there until I moved up here to be with Marty in 1988.
Okay, so Marty graduates from Kent State. You graduate from UNC.
Well, actually, I never graduated. I'm a high-end dropout.
I'm with you there, too. I did the same thing. Now the public knows that. I think whoever didn't know that knows that.
My band, Arrogance, that got started when I was a freshman at Carolina, ended up getting signed to Vanguard. And it was like, I sort of saw the handwriting on the wall. If I was going to do anything, I needed to not worry about school. I could always go back to school. But if we were going to do anything, I needed to really concentrate on the band. So that's why I dropped out. But I didn't flunk out. I just dropped out.
She reminded me of you. She did the things that a girl like you might do. Her body was green and she had two vicious jaws. Oh, she polished her mate and she kissed him with her claws.
Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Hey, I want to talk about Plug. Plug makes it easy for you to purchase the personal technology you need at 40 to 70% off retail pricing. What can you get from Plug? Certified pre-owned devices, including iPhones, Androids, AirPods, Macs, smartwatches, accessories, and more. I originally didn't even want an Apple Watch, but I got one from Plug and I love it. I wear it every day. Your purchase is backed by their unmatched 1-year warranty and a 30-day money-back guarantee. One more very cool thing, Plug is dedicated to helping reduce e-waste around the globe. To date, Plug has helped save over 1 million devices from reaching landfills. And they're looking to double that number by 2025. Link to Plug from the show notes and check out all the great deals and savings on certified pre-owned devices. Plug Tech. Check it out.
Hey, this is Don Dixon. You're listening to Frets with DJ Fey.
Well, you formed Arrogance, I guess, in the late 60s, but they went all the way through like the early 80s, right?
Yeah, we played at least 150 shows a year, probably from 1971 to 1982. We formed in 69. We made our first recording in January 1970. We were freshmen in college. I'd just turned 19. The other singer, Robert Kirkland, had just turned 19. I think the guitar player was still 18. The drummer was probably still 18. He might have been 19. But we were young, but the right age for being a rock band. I mean, you're supposed to be young.
Yeah. But Marty, you joined a group, Color Me Gone, as the lead singer. Was that about the same time that, your musical careers were starting to kind of begin?
No.
No.
Yeah. I continued to play throughout college and beyond, and I found out I could make $50 a night by playing in these sort of nice restaurants with a lounge. Oh. So when people were waiting for their tables, they would sit there and be entertained by me and hopefully coax them in to have a cocktail before and after. And so I did that by myself for a while and then joined up with a bass player for a while. And then we got a third guy, and it did it for so long that I just really started to hate it. So I hated playing, and I didn't want to do it if I wasn't getting paid for it. That was it. It was a job. But I got a call from the guys in Color Me Gone that said Liam Sternberg, whom I had met earlier, had told them they should give me a call, that they needed a girl singer for their band. He liked the songs. He was in LA at the time, and as a producer was shopping stuff for them. Shopping around at labels. And so
no, he was shopping at Walmart.
He was shopping at Walmart. Right. And so they called me, and I went, and we did a couple of demos, and it worked out. So I joined that band. We got a deal with R.E.M, and we made a 6-song EP. And then we're touring behind that kind of, and we had a disagreement, and I quit. And it was a big disagreement. So I was miserable. I mean, I loved playing original music. I loved doing something different, being in a band. It was fun. But it was also really odd and for me. And so I decided to quit and, figured if this was what it was like, I'd rather do something else. So I was prepared to go back to school or something. And
weren't you going to do medical illustration?
Yeah, I was always interested in medical illustration. And so in school in Cleveland has a program. But we as a band had been, in Color Me Gone, had been looking for someone to redo some of the songs on the 6-song EP, which I didn't agree with. But, and Dixon was one of the people that came to talk to us because it was on the heels of the release of Marr, and he was working on Reckoning, and he flew in to talk to us. And he said, out of his mouth came the words, "Why are you redoing this? Why don't you just put this out and start writing for your next record, which is a full album?" Which I was like, my eyes just were so wide open and my mouth open, because that's exactly how I felt. And
plus, they had made a really good 6-song EP at that point that didn't need to be done again. And it was a real sort of affront to the guys who'd signed him, and the head of A&R at A&M, who's one of the producers of this EP. They were going to replace him because the bass player didn't like the way his bass sounded. I mean, it was classic dumbass band stuff.
It is. There's so many things like that bands do, and I did not want to go through that.
No. Anyway, they didn't listen to me.
And so he got in touch with me when he found out I'd quit the band, and sent me a postcard and told the label that he wanted to work with me because they were still interested in keeping me on as a solo.
Well, yeah, I was having dinner with the head of A&R and the the 2 top A&R people at A&M about a completely different band, and they brought Marty up. It's not like I said, "Oh, how about that Marti Jones?" They said, "Hey, you met Marty, and we love her. We want to keep her on the label, but she's going to be a solo, and she's not really a writer. Are you interested in trying to work with her?" And I said, "Absolutely. I know a lot of great writers."
And the rest is history.
Yeah. We did some songs. One of the first songs we did was a Peter Holsapple song.
It was Lonely as His Lonely Does. Mm-hmm. Yep. And the other one was we did 2 songs initially. The other one was written by Richard Barone of the Bongos.
Huh. Well, I'm going to tell a little story here that's going to lead into the next part of this, which all ties into what you're talking about.
Okay.
It really does. I'm not taking too hard of a detour, but I was working in a small art department in the late 80s. Small as in I was pretty much the art department. It was just kind of me working for a print shop. And we occasionally printed flyers and posters for BMG Music, who was a distributor of IRS records, and then I think eventually bought IRS. Don, you would know, I think.
Yeah.
Anyway, I had designed a handful of, and they were just these one-color, inexpensive album promos that would get basically put up on record store windows and all of that. So I dropped off some posters one day at BMG. They had like a Midwestern warehouse here in St. Louis. And this guy who ran the place, funny guy named Freddie Love, he comes out and said, "Oh, thanks. These are great. Thanks for the posters." And he's like, "What kind of music do you like?" And as usual, I said, "I'm all over the place. I like a little of everything." So he says, "Well, come back to the warehouse. I'll lay a few albums on you."
Oh, wow.
Yeah, which was great. And so
No kidding.
They had all these vinyl albums. Most of them had like a promotional, not for sale stamp, because they'd give them to record stores or whatever, radio stations.
Uh-huh.
So he gives me this stack, and I take it home, and in that were Murmur and Reckoning.
Wow.
And I know those had been out a while before I discovered them, but I took them home and gave them a spin, and it was just mesmerizing. It was like nothing I'd ever heard before.
Yeah, I agree.
And
Same.
I mean, since I was a kid, though, I just was always reading the liner notes to albums all the time. And I wanted to know not just the musicians, I wanted to know who produced this and who did what, So all this to say, my long little segue there that was my first awareness of Don Dixon and Mitch Easter on those early R.E.M. albums.
Good.
And so, yeah, I've known of you for many, many years. But it was just kind of cool that he, hands me this stack of records, and I come home and I'm like, oh, I am in love with this. And it began a very long love affair with R.E.M.
I'm very happy. They're a band that people love or hate. And they were always sort of, which is a great thing. I mean, that means you matter. If somebody can get up enough energy to really think you're horrible, that means that you have done something. And just as many people understand it, and get it, and it means something to them. But people love you and hate you for all the wrong reasons anyway. So that's not even the point. But I remember a guy when I was working on Murmur, and he was a guy that got a really good band. He was a very good musician he was a guy from North Carolina. We cut those records at a studio called Reflection. And he had dropped in and he said, "What are you working on?" And I played him a piece of, I can't remember what song, some song from Murmur. And he said, "What the hell do you call that?" And I said, "I think they're referring to this. The writers are calling this alternative." And he said, "Alternative to what? Good?"
Oh.
So they always, they would have people, even before they were well known at all, like they weren't well known when we made Murmur, but they did have the one EP, which is great out, Chronic Town.
Yes.
But there were kids that would be hanging out at the studio door to see them. So, they already had those kind of fanatical worshipers before Murmur ever even came out.
Okay, well, while we're on that subject, you got to tell me, because I've heard or read varying stories about this on Murmur on the song "We Walk."
Yeah.
Obviously, if you're listening, and a lot of times I was very much a headphone guy.
Right.
But I could hear the balls rolling across a pool table, obviously.
Right.
Was that like Bill Berry in another room or something? Or who was playing pool? Or
Here's the thing. Mitch and I both thought that "We Walk" was a little bit happy sounding. We thought it was too happy sounding. So we kept thinking of ways to make the track have more weight.
Ah, okay.
And for it to have just a disturbing element to it. Because it's it's
like a skip through the park.
Yeah. So it's got this real skippy kind of thing. And so when I heard, it was some of the guys in the band, I'm just Bill and probably Mike, whoever, downstairs, there was a lounge below the studio, below the control room that had a pool table. So what you're hearing is I recorded them shooting pool at a really high speed so that when you played it back at a slower speed, it would be these long, low explosions.
Yeah.
And then I ran it through a thing called an EMT plate that cause those explosions to be even more like thunder or just be mysterious. And you can hear some talking in there too, like just some low.
Yep.
So, and the band went for it. You know, we would do a lot of things like that. They would let us use, you know, we didn't want to use any synthesizers or anything like that, but they would let us use organs and vibraphones and bowls of water that people would hit with sticks.
Huh.
So we used noises like that and organic instruments to sort of keep it from just being, you know, the three of them playing.
Right.
But they were very good band and really interesting. And we just wanted to, you know, capture as much of that in Amber as we could because we knew it would change because bands always change. Bands evolve.
Yeah. Oh, I was a huge fan, and I saw him a handful of times, and much later I saw Mike a couple times with the baseball project. Mike Mills. House concerts around here. Oh, well, Rick Woods.
Yeah, well, both the guys are playing with the baseball project now. It's really great.
Yeah, Peter Buck.
Yeah. Well, Peter would play bass with him west of the Mississippi.
Oh, okay.
And Mike would play bass with him east of the Mississippi. And then when Scott had his stroke, Peter started playing some guitar because they weren't sure how much guitar Scott could really play.
Right.
But Scott got well. He's good. He's fine. But, you know, and Scott had toured with the band for a long time. The last few tours that R.E.M. did, Scott was in the band. He came in after Peter Holzapfel left the touring band.
Right. Well, from there, Don, you went on to produce so many classic albums, and we will get to that too. But I want to talk about another album I discovered around that same time period, I believe. And that was Used Guitars. Marty, a friend of mine, I worked with this guy, very interesting guy, who sadly he's no longer with us either. But years ago, I worked with a guy, and he was like this Beatle fanatic. He was just into lots of different things. His main thing was he was just fanatical about Beatle memorabilia and obscure Beatle, you know, recordings and stuff like that. But he was like, "Hey, you need to listen to this." And he actually gave me a copy of Used Guitars.
Wow.
And around that time, I was really into like Nick Lowe, Graham Parker, Brinsley Schwartz, that whole, you know, rock pile. I was just fanatical about that stuff too. So I loved and still love your cover of You Can't Take Love for Granted.
Oh, thanks.
That is so cool that she did a version of that.
Well, I saw him on David Letterman when I was still in Color Me Gone, and Graham was playing his thin-bodied acoustic guitar, acoustic electric, and through a Roland JC-120, and I loved the way it sounded. It was like, how fast can I get that going? But I loved the song also. And he played Can't Take Love for Granted. I was like, what is this? I love it. And
that was always a favorite of mine. Yeah. Great,
it's so good. And he's you know, one of a kind also.
Yeah, yes.
Great guy.
I've seen him a lot too,
yeah.
Took her to a restaurant and
Peter Holsapple was on the show again recently, and I mentioned my love of that song and that album. And I got to mention this too, because another of your albums I love is You're Not the Boss of Me.
Oh,
And
thanks.
it just got such a great feel to it. But the track that just kills me is Keep It to Yourself. I mean, it's pretty dark humor, but the dark humor is like right up my alley.
It's Amy Rigby is the queen of dark humor. She's so clever. And I toured with her for a little while, and she would do that song, and I was so excited to hear it every night because everyone would howl with laughter. And so I said, I kind of want to do a bossa nova record, and definitely the first song I want to do is Keep It to Yourself. So I almost did the record so that I could do that song.
Yeah, I saw her also at a house concert. She was with Reckless Eric, and pretty sure that was in her. Her set list that day too. So I love that. I love your version of it. It's really, really cool.
Oh, thanks. It's just a little slicked up version of hers.
Let's remember that Bill DeMain also was one of the writers.
Oh, yeah.
She wrote that song with a Nashville guy, a very good writer named Bill DeMain. If you're not familiar with Bill or Swan Dive, you should check Swan Dive out.
Yeah, I'm making a note.
Yeah, definitely.
You say you'd like to kill the man who broke my heart. You don't think he should be allowed to live. You say you want to shoot the dude who screwed me up. Oh, me, I'm trying so hard to forgive. But here's his address, here's his picture, here's the make and model of his car. He works until 4:30, then he hangs out at the topless bar with a girl on each arm. If he should come to harm, just keep it to yourself. Just keep it to yourself. Remember how you cheated and you lied to me. You say it makes you want to lose your head.
Stay tuned. We'll be right back. She's provided guitar, drums, and vocals in many bands over the years. Das Yahoos, Pink Slip Daddy, The Friggs, Bubblegun, Palmyra Delran and the Doppelgang, and she currently hosts the wonderful Trash Pop Treasures on Little Steven's Underground Garage.
So I would hop the little local train to Philly and go to the record conventions. And that's where I first met Lenny Kaye. Yeah, I was like, oh my God. I was like a little kid and I was like, oh my God, that's Lenny Kaye, you know? So I walked over and I was like, hi, I'm a big fan of the Nuggets collection. And we sat and bullshitted for 20 minutes. And then I went back the next year and I saw him again and he remembered me. And that was like a mind blower. You know what I mean? And now we work together.
My talk with Palmyra Delran is available on Frets. Well, Don, you also produced some of Guadalcanal Diaries' classic albums, and Murray Attaway was on the show a couple of years ago. And
good.
He and I Well, Murray and I just recorded a second episode where we talked about his new solo album, which I think is coming out in May, Tense Music Plays.
Yep. It's good.
And you produced that?
He and Peter and I played some 2 shows together, 2 like sort of house concerts together, and recently, and it was really fun to hear some of those songs live. No, I had nothing to do with his new record, but it's
I thought you did.
not
Murray.
Not Murray's. I produced Peter's record, but I
right.
Didn't have anything to do with Murray's, except I got to listen to some of it as it was being created, which was
That's
great.
right. Because Peter and I talked quite a bit about how I think you guys made that album, The Face of 68, in like 3.5 days or something.
Yeah, but that's sort of like these days, that's sort of my normal time. I just finished a James McMurtry record that we weren't in the studio much more than that, maybe 4 days. It's a great record. It'll come out in June.
So good.
Really good.
I was just going to say, on The Face of 68, you not only produced and mixed it, but you also added keyboards and percussion and harmony.
Yeah,
and Marty,
I did a little.
album.
Marty sings on a song.
Yeah.
But he does that for a lot of things, and occasionally he will ask if I can sing, or if the artist asks for it, of course. But that one I was so excited because I just loved that song, and I love Peter. So I was really excited. I love that song too that I got to sing on.
Well, I also learned something in talking to him that I feel like I probably should have known, but Peter was saying that, Marty, you did the cover art for White Noise and Lightning, the Continental Drifters story.
I did.
Beautiful artwork.
Well, that was nice of him. Oh, thank you. That was nice of him to mention that. I'll have to thank him.
We were talking quite a bit about the Continental Drifters at one point, and I'd seen them years ago too, but your paintings are beautiful. I was looking at the gallery on your website, and just beautiful,
thank you.
Beautiful stuff.
Thank you so much. And are you an artist?
I'm a designer. I've been an art director since I was like 18. And again, I did some college, but I ended up, the majority of, I learned on the job. The thing was, I was offered a job when I was like right out of, school, and I just decided to go for it. My dad was like, you could get a lot of on-the-job experience if you go ahead and do it.
He was smart.
I was just as young, they called it an apprenticeship, basically. I guess it was, nowadays they call it an intern, but
right.
I started in an art department, and I've been doing that my whole life. But
that's great.
Is that how you and Rick know each other?
Yeah, because Rick is an amazing artist.
Oh my God.
So
sculptures and things.
Creative.
He is so clever.
Yeah, he's so creative, and I just love looking at all the art in his home. But yeah, I collaborate with him a lot. I love this, but he'll ask me to do, and not just me, like there's a handful of local artists that he'll tap into, for posters for like a house concert or whatever. So we'll get together for lunch, and he'll tell me he usually has the vision. He'll say, here's what I'm thinking. And then, like we did a baseball pennant for the baseball project.
I saw that. That was great. That was yours.
So that was one of mine. I'm looking at it right now.
Yeah, it's really good.
But yeah, no, your paintings are absolutely beautiful. And I was until he mentioned that, I was like, I didn't know that was Marty. So anyway.
Now, have you done anything for Woodstock yet?
I did the poster for the first year. I did the poster for last year's, and I am currently working on this year's Woodstock. And I love that name, Woodstock.
I wanna play at Woodstock. He hasn't asked me yet.
Great.
So put a good word in for me.
This is the first time I'm hearing that. It's
great. It's a
Woodstock.
festival they have at their new place on the lake.
On the lake, yeah. That's funny.
I love it. Yeah. Now we will soon be revealing and I should clarify, there's a great illustrator, a local illustrator, Kevin Belford, and he supplied the illustration for last year's, and I did the typography.
Okay.
Same with this year's Woodstock 4 is a Kevin Belford illustration, and I'm doing the design of the list of artists and the dates and all that. So
can't wait to see it.
Coming soon.
I love that.
All right. one of the Continental Drifters, Vicky Peterson, my favorite Bangle, played a show just a few nights ago. She played a show with John Cowsill just about an hour away from here in St. Louis. And I was very fortunate to be there. It was really a special evening. Saw quite a few friends there. And that new album of theirs is really just great. It was really fun. And I
haven't
really,
heard the
really
whole
great
thing yet. And I really want to, because what I heard I loved.
Yeah, yeah. It was a really cool place, too. Rick had never been there. I'd never been there. It was this kind of small, intimate venue, literally called Venue on Main. And it was so cool because I got there. I misjudged my time. I was afraid I'd run into all kinds of afternoon traffic. I got there way earlier than I expected, parked, and I walked up. And I look in the window, and Vicky and John, their backs to me, they were like facing in, doing their sound check. And so, yeah, the owners waved me in. And so I was like, other than the owners, I was the only one like sitting there. And they were so cool. Like when they finished, John came over and talked a bit. Vicky came over and talked a bit. And it was just a wonderful, wonderful show.
Good.
Yeah.
I love hearing that.
We know Vicky a little bit, and Marty did the demo for Walk Like an Egyptian. I don't know, you know that or not?
I meant to talk about that earlier. I think I did know that that was before, that was before the Bangles did it.
Well, yeah, because it was the original
demo,
recording.
right?
She helped make it up. Really.
Liam Sternberg, that I mentioned earlier, was co-producing the Color Me Gone record, and
the EP, yeah.
Yeah, he's a writer, and he had written a couple of songs and asked me. He had a studio real close to where the studio was where we were recording, and he asked me if I would just sing on the demos because he was Walk Like an Egyptian. He wrote meaning to get it to Tony Basil on the heels of that. Wow. I'll make you what a pity you don't understand. Yeah. He thought that would be a good visual thing for her. And then he had written a different song for the Bangles, which was called Fall to Innocence or something like that, which I really liked too. And I thought Walk Like an Egyptian was just really stupid. He did too. We laughed about it. And, but it, I didn't know anything about anything. And, cut to years later, I was sitting at a friend's house here in Canton having lunch, and she said, "Oh, the new Bangles record's out. It's really good. I'm going to put it on." And she put it on, and I heard, imagine my surprise, Walk Like an Egyptian coming from the Bangles. I was knocked over. I couldn't believe it. So it was fun. It was on some collection of records A&M put out, too, called Number One with a Bullet. It was A&M?
I don't know who put it out. I
think A&M did put it out.
I don't know. There was Marty's version is what she meant. Is on a record called Number One with a Bullet, which was the demos of a bunch of number one songs. So it's like Ashford and Simpson singing one of their number one songs that was for Whitney Houston or somebody, and Marty singing this Bangles song. And so it's a lot of that kind of stuff. It's kind of a cool little record.
There's not much difference between Liam's demo and what they recorded, except maybe the singing is a little slicker.
Yeah, your singing is pretty good on it, though. And then they definitely kept your attitude.
Yeah.
Which is a big part of that song.
Which was the whole time I was singing, I was going, this is the dumbest song I've ever heard. Anyway.
Well, for the record, Vicky did close the show the other night with a very fun version of that. And it was fun. We were like singing along, and it was a lot of fun.
Oh, that's great.
That's good.
Yeah, it was cool she was kind of cutting loose on her electric guitar too, which was pretty cool.
She's a great guitar player.
She's a great guitar player, yeah.
And we're friends with Susan Cowsill, actually a little better than, we know her better than we do Vicky. And Susan sang a demo of a song that Marty recorded years later, when she was with Dwight Twilley, and it's a Dwight Twilley song Marty recorded.
So now to complete the circle, we need for Vicky to sing a demo of a song that I will later record.
Okay.
To close that circle.
Yeah, close the whole circle off. But I thought it was interesting that they did this album of all of John's brothers' songs.
Yeah.
And they picked really good songs.
Yeah.
They're great. They're really good. Yeah.
Yep.
And I think it shows people a depth that people don't usually associate with those guys.
Yeah.
Because they think of Indian Lake and their kid hits and all that stuff. And,
yeah.
But they were quite something.
Yeah.
There's a room upstairs with a perfect view. I open my eyes and look at you with your messy hair and your sleepy smile. You're so beautiful, baby. You're just my style. I don't know, where did you come from? I just know you're the only one. Come on, let's go sail into the sun on the ship of fools, on this sea of love. When I see you walk through the kitchen door, you deliver me, baby, I need no more.
Hi, it's Marti Jones here, and you are listening to Frets with DJ Fey.
Well, I've talked with quite a few people who were either from or are now in North Carolina. Florence Dorr, I mentioned, was on. Of course, Peter Holsapple, Rick Miller and Mary Huff of Southern Cultural Skids.
I love
they
them.
were on the show. And pretty soon, I'll be talking, actually very soon, with Jefferson Hart of Secret Monkey Weekend.
Yay!
Fun.
Their new
Now-
record is great.
Now, I think I'm getting this right. Don, you did produce the new album Lemon Drop Hammer, right?
Yeah, I've done both of the Secret Monkey Weekend records. I love them
thought so.
both. And
I do too.
And this new one is great. The girls are just sort of getting more comfortable in their skin every day and growing up, you know. And it's great. They're a great family.
The stepdaughters, right?
They're his stepdaughters. Their dad was a drummer that played in Jefferson's band years ago before he died.
And they were kind of best friends.
Yeah, they were. I mean, they were bandmates and,
Oh, wow.
you know, very close.
Yeah, I'm excited about that. I think that's pretty soon. We're scheduled to talk. And I'm loving what I'm hearing out of them, too. It's a great band.
Yeah.
Well, I would ask if you're currently working on anything, but you guys are always working on something.
Oh,
Well,
I'm not, because I have decided I don't want to do it anymore.
Well, good for you. I
So-
have those days when I don't want to do it anymore.
So I stopped doing it so I could stay home and paint, but I realized I needed to make a few dollars and contribute to that. I felt like, what am I going to do? I'm painting, but I'm not selling any necessarily, so not enough. So I got a job, an actual job.
Oh, well, good for you.
First actual job.
she's a senator.
I'm a brain surgeon. Well, it's been nice talking to you.
I am
and
not a brain surgeon.
Talking with you, and thanks for asking us to do this.
Well, thank you both so much for doing this. This was really great.
Thanks, Dave.
Thanks.
I'll see you.
Tell me why I'm addicted to you. Tell me why I'm so crazy for you. I've got your pictures.
Thanks for tuning in, and coming up, a talk with Jefferson Hart of Secret Monkey Weekend. Jeff's story is incredibly cool, and the band's new album, Lemon Drop Hammer, releases in June. Hope you'll join me again next time. Stay tuned.
So happy that you love me, and I could never possibly give you the blues. Tell me why